I've been following Cardi B's hair growth journey, and she says all she used is boiled onions and put it in her hair, and y'all, her hair has grown so much over the past month. This was her hair before she started using onions and after. If you want your hair to grow long, click the orange card to buy this shampoo and conditioner set, and it also has onions included, but it doesn't smell like onions. Hurry up and buy before they sell out.
There are thousands of these type of videos on TikTok promoting amazing hair growth results from items that you can get either out of your fridge or at your local pharmacy. Things like onion juice, rosemary oil, biotin. But do they really work? I mean, for some of y'all out there, all it takes is seeing someone with long, thick, flowing locks rubbing anything on their scalp before y'all running to get your credit card information and entering it to buy whatever it is they selling. So to save yourself from yourself, today we are dissecting some of the biggest hair growth hacks talked about on TikTok. And with the help of board-certified dermatologist and hair loss specialist, Dr. Adeline Keycam, we're gonna discover which of these can and cannot get you long, thick hair down to your butt, much like me. This is not a weave. This is all me. It's not a weave. I don't care what you say. It's all mine. All right. First up, we need to understand some hair basics, okay? Because some of these hair videos I've done on this channel, some of y'all get a little bit beside yourselves, okay? Now, we covered this in, greater detail in, these videos here with Dr. Crystal Aga, who is also a board-certified dermatologist who specializes in hair loss. So if you want to get the full spiel, check these out here. However, some basics just to get us through this video. Everyone is born with as many hair follicles as they're ever gonna get. Now, the average is about 100,000, but there are people who have a lot less than that. There are people who have a lot more than that. There's no way to get you more hair follicles on your head. Now, the follicles are, kind of like the little holes on your scalp with which, the hair sprouts out of. And if you were born with 90,000, you ain't getting to 150. Sorry, sis. Now, another basic, the hair itself is made of up to 3 parts. And I say up to because not everybody's gonna get the 3rd part. So you got the cuticle, which is the outermost layer. Then you got the cortex, which is beneath the cuticle, and some really cool things happen in the cortex. That's where the keratin proteins, and your hair's made of proteins, and the melanin, obviously you know what melanin does, those are located in the cuticle. And those are responsible for giving hair its strength, its elasticity, and its color. Now the 3rd part, not everybody's gonna get the 3rd part. Now that's the medulla. Now they're not quite sure what, the function of the medulla is, but it is often found in thicker hair types. And they think that it provides some sort of structural support. And all of these things make us unique in the way that our hair looks, feels, and reacts to, products and the environment and, how we style it and whatnot. It makes us all very special, right? However, though, because those differences are so special, it's kind of hard, and no one hair type is better than the other. You just gotta work with what you got. Which brings me to my next point. If you have thin hair, right, and I'm not saying this as a diss or anything like that, it's just said as fact, and somebody who doesn't want you going down the wrong path thinking that you can do all of this stuff when, it's not really, possible. If you have thin hair, there's no oil, no dietary supplement, none of that is gonna automatically get you thicker hair. Because basically what would need to happen is that you would have to have more follicles, on your scalp. And remember what we said, that, you are already born with as many follicles as you gonna get, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do some trickery through certain haircuts and hairstyles and, hair color and things like that to give the appearance of more voluminous hair. I mean, not everyone can have long, thick, luxurious locks like me. Now, the crazy thing though is people online do seem to be getting some amazing results from some of these hair hacks. So what's up? And let's start with onion juice. TikTokers are slicing and dicing, seeping the juice out of the onion like it's tea to extract those hair growing powers. But what does the science say?
So onion juice is interesting. I love onions, by the way. There was a study that came out, or some survey that said Americans are eating onions now more than ever, which I thought was interesting. But apart from just like it being one of my favorite dietary things, onion is very, very rich in sulfur. Sulfur also is a major compound when it comes to keratin formation. And as you know, hair is primarily made up of keratin proteins. There's actually a study, a very small study, that had the participants apply crude onion juice on their scalp versus tap water. And they actually saw that when it came to autoimmune hair loss like alopecia areata, that actually helped. But this was a very small study. I think it was 38 participants. And over the course of 2 to 6 weeks, I think over 80% of them saw hair growth. And the reason that they think those in the group that used or applied the crude onion juice saw an improvement in hair was probably because the sulfurs kind of stimulated vasodilation, what basically increased circulation to the hair follicle. And then the sulfur also has antibacterial properties. So anything that is going to inhibit hair growth, like infection, they're thinking that might have helped with dealing with any kind of infection or some infection that may be on the scalp, which kind of promotes hair growth. And then they also thought because sulfur promotes collagen building, that may be another reason. All this, I'm trying to basically come up with reasons, or what I'm mentioning, come up with reasons why that group may have seen some improvement in the hair loss, that promoting collagen helps support the hair shaft. So that's what we're thinking with this study. Now, this was only one study, and I believe there were only 38 participants.
Before y'all go and sell out onions everywhere,
but just know that was for alopecia areata, that particular study. And that's one study, a very small study. Is not what I would go on of in terms of just saying, you know what, this is a slam dunk for hair loss.
now let's get into rosemary oil. So there's a study comparing rosemary oil to 2% minoxidil. Now, minoxidil is the active ingredient that's found in a lot of hair regrowing treatments. The most common one, the most popular one, I would say, is probably Rogaine. However, this is another case of a small study that pertains to a certain type of hair loss.
This was for androgenetic alopecia, and it compared rosemary oil to 2% minoxidil. In the study, they showed that they had the same or comparative benefits or in terms of improvements of the hair loss. But again, small, one study. There's not much you can extrapolate with it, but the internet really ran with this, and they're saying using it for basically all types of hair loss. This was for androgenetic alopecia. Now, rosemary oil has some anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, even some antimicrobial benefits when it comes to using it on the scalp. But again, it's still more of like an adjunctive therapy, that you use alongside your major therapy. And when you compare it to all the clinical studies behind minoxidil, I would choose minoxidil as a dermatologist any day over rosemary oil. You have to remember that these are essential oils and they can be very irritating to the scalp. I would go with a 2 to 5% minoxidil that has the strong clinical evidence as far as its use. It really prolongs what they call the anagen phase of the hair growth cycle, which actually that's a hair growth phase. So there's just way more evidence in terms of what it does in the hair follicle in terms of stimulating hair growth versus rosemary oil.
Well, sheesh, certainly biotin is the answer, right? Right? We already shook the table a few years ago when it came to biotin when I had Dr. Crystal Agu, who is also a board-certified dermatologist who specializes in hair loss, when we did this video here on the truth behind growing back your edges. Now, in that video, which I suggest you look at after you finish watching this one, Dr. Agu mentioned how biotin has had the best PR campaign in history. But let's see what Dr. Kikem has to say.
Lord, please, y'all, don't come for me. If you want to have your biotin, I'm just here to give you the facts. I have no skin in this game. So, biotin is an important cofactor when it comes to hair, skin, and nails. However, we're not seeing that it makes a dramatic difference in terms of improving hair loss in individuals that don't have a deficiency. And a biotin deficiency is very rare. I've never come across anyone, even when I do hair loss panels that have a biotin deficiency. For those who have a biotin deficiency, it will make the most difference. Like they have brittle hair, brittle nails. But as for supplementation, by the way, we're already in a country that over supplements. We take more over-the-counter supplements than any other country, I believe. And a lot of this can be very unnecessary because we are taking it without any true deficiencies. So that's how we as dermatologists feel when it comes to biotin. It's just very weak. If you don't have a biotin deficiency, you're just making the pee expensive at this point. We have seen evidence that biotin is going to disrupt some tests, like you're having a heart attack, right? And you go to the hospital, what they check are your troponins to basically see if a heart attack or damage has been done to the heart muscles. That's how we can tell that somebody's having a heart attack. When you oversupplement with biotin, it can actually distort those results where you either get high troponins, low troponins, and if you're having a true heart attack and that is low, they can't catch it, right? That is another thing that it affects some of these tests. And I think the other one is thyroid tests. So if you go to the hospital, you have to be clear, or you're seeing a physician, you have to be clear that you are using or you're supplementing with some of these things, that you're taking biotin, because that can affect other tests for other conditions.
All right, let me just clarify here that Dr. Kikam, especially when she's talking about the testing, biotin affecting some of your medical tests, she's talking about taking it orally and not applying it topically. So just so you know. And speaking of applying biotin topically, I went and bought those Cecred drops because I kept seeing so many TikTok videos of people saying like, oh my God, look at how much hair, how much my edges grew back after 30 days of using the Cecred drops. I was like, okay. At first I was like, look, man, Beyonce get enough of my coins, okay? I ain't paying $58 for a bottle of Cecred or whatever. But I was like, you know what? I have been a guinea pig for beauty before on this channel, and I'll do it again. Now, I'm not even quite sure what I can call traction alopecia, obviously, but the hair would grow back, but it seems like it could never catch up to the length of the rest of the hair. What's probably the culprit? More than likely, more than anything, braids, because the braids kind of hang down, and as they get a little older, it hangs down and it weighs heavy on the hair. And sometimes, the hairstylist would braid in the short parts in with the braids. I know from now on, never do that again. And then I'm a one-trick pony with hairstyle, so I was like doing the ponytails a lot. That probably contributed to it as well, but I would have to say the main culprit is probably them damn braids. Now, the thing is, when my hair is straight, it's not as noticeable. Even when my hair is natural, depending on the hairstyle, I can kind of hide it or whatever. Sometimes you can't hide it. So I aim to apply them every day for a month. However, I did notice that my hair would kind of revert a little bit, which is weird to me because why, Beyonce. Now, if your hair's natural, obviously, okay, who cares? But if you're wearing your hair in a heat-styled, your press, whatever, you trying to, keep that press for as long as possible. Well, not as long as possible, like a week or two. You gotta wash your hair. See, I don't know why I thought that this was an oil in the name. It's Storing Hair and Edge Drop. So the first ingredient in here is water, which means it's water-based. And if you're pressing your hair and you use something that's water-based, you do run the risk of it reverting. Usually you want to look for something that's oil-based. So that explained a lot. So I mostly used it every day, except for when I would freshly get my hair done. And within that week and a half, I was like, we got to keep this press. Because let me tell you something, I work hard to keep my press because I walk on the treadmill for an hour, 6 days a week. And then I go work out, lift weights and stuff like that with my trainer 3 times a week. So I make sure I put on my gym wrap from Nicole Ari Parker. And then I put a Nike wrap on top of that. And that keeps and then I leave it on an hour after I'm done with the gym. I'm trying to preserve my hairstyle and whatnot. I can't be having the edge drops taking me back. I feel like I noticed a little bit of a difference, but I'm also like, it kind of still looks the same. So y'all let me know if you see a difference or not. But people do seem to get results with some of these hair growth hacks. So what is up with that?
If you are seeing results, that's fine. I'm not there to take anything away from you. I'm just saying when it comes to using evidence-based treatments for hair loss, I'm just telling you what the data is showing, why some of those things would remain what is called adjunctive, meaning that you just take it to maybe supplement what you're already doing that has major evidence. So if you go see a doctor and they're saying this is what we're going to use versus what you are saying totally works, you might be having some hair growth or some visible results, but in terms of treatments with strong clinical evidence, what you're seeing may not be as robust as what has the data, the evidence, the scientific everything to support it. You know what I mean? So when somebody comes and I'm like, hey, I'm taking biotin and I'm like, that's, as long as that's not, you're not saying this is the cure, this is the one thing I'm relying on, this is my mainstay therapy, this is my mainstay treatment. You cannot go and expect to see a physician and that is the one thing that the physician is going to give you versus other things. So let's just be clear about this. If you're making that decision on your own to go out there and get something over the counter that you think works, by all means, that's really up to you. But if we're talking about evidence-based medicine, that's where I come in, and that's my point of view.
Okay, so what's a girl to do if she's trying to grow her edges back or realizes that all of a sudden she has a bald spot in the middle of her crown or excessive shedding? What's a girl to do?
Very, very important. I tell my patients this all the time. Time is here because the longer you wait to come see us, or you might limit some of the choices of treatment or options of treatments we have for you. And that is especially when scarring sets in. And scarring is when like you've essentially lost your hair follicles, right? There's really nothing there for us to stimulate, or it's just harder to get the hair to grow. So as soon as you realize that something is not right with your hair, I always encourage folks to come in. But this part is really important to me because there's a time lag from when somebody sits, let's say, in a stylist chair to when they get to the dermatologist. They're still going to the stylist to work magic, to do everything to grow hair. And I love stylists that really bridge that gap, that can look at somebody and be like, okay, this is what you can do for your hair in terms of styling, good hair care practices. But girl or sir, we're getting into this stage where you need to see a physician. This is a medical problem. I'm looking at your scalp. I'm looking at your hair. I'm looking at what is happening. And I think this is now beyond what I can do for you. And that's the reason why in building my medical clinic, my dermatology clinic in Houston, I've actually put a hair salon inside the clinic to bridge that time. So when you come in there, I'm just down the hallway and I can get to most of my Black patients, women especially, and get them care for their hair loss while also taking care of the grooming aspect of the hair.
Dr. Kikam also summarized what you can expect when you go to the dermatologist for hair loss, depending on the type of hair loss that you have, because not everything can be treated the same, and there's so many different types of hair loss.
When you come to the dermatologist office, there are many things we can do for you. In terms of even the diagnostics part, right? Instead, not only like visually examining your scalp with a dermatoscope that allows us to really get in there and see things, but we could also do scalp biopsies. A lot of folks are self-treating without a biopsy, especially if you're going to clinicians that are not dermatologists. Getting that biopsy gives us a lot of information about what type of hair loss you're dealing with and potentially what stage you're in, especially in scarring alopecia. Very important. And then once we have a bona fide or solidified diagnosis about what type of hair loss you're having, we have options for oral therapy, but also procedures that we can do. And as far as oral therapy, Minoxidill is part of them. You guys already know about Minoxidill, but there's also finasteride. There's also things like oral steroids as well as analog injectable steroids. And then we have microneedling combined with PRP, sometimes even laser therapy, red light therapy. And then in some cases where it's needed, hair transplant, where we take healthy follicles and transfer them to other areas that need that density and need that hair growth. So many things that we can do in office as medical specialists that other folks cannot do.
Like I said earlier, while there are many different types of hair loss, Dr. Kikam mentioned that a good majority of the cases that she personally sees are from traction alopecia, which is quite often caused by so-called protective styles. See, I don't do protective styles because I just wear, my own hair out, like, because I was born with this. Which protective styles are safe to try? Which ones should you avoid like the plague? To find out, click on this video right here, where board certified dermatologist Dr. Crystal Agu, who, like I've mentioned in this video before, also specializes in hair loss, grades protective styles from A to F. Find out if your current protective style, or maybe something you're thinking about getting, find out what grade it gets. Click on this video here and I'll see you there.